If you grew up in the 1970s, your brain was shaped in a way that can no longer be recreated today. Not because your childhood was perfect, but because it was something the modern world has quietly erased. And decades later, your mind is still running on that system. Most people think growing up in the 70s was just about simpler times. Less technology, more freedom, different rules. But what they don't realize is that those conditions didn't just change your memories. They changed your wiring. Because your childhood happened during a very specific window in history, a moment where there was enough freedom, enough risk, enough boredom, and just enough responsibility to shape how your brain responds to the world forever. You learned something most people today struggle with: how to function without constant stimulation. Back then, boredom was normal. There was no phone to grab, no feed to scroll, no instant distraction waiting to rescue you. If you said you were bored, you already knew the answer. Go find something to do. And that one phrase forced your brain to develop something powerful: self-direction. You had to create your own day, invent your own fun, solve your own boredom. And without realizing it, your brain learned how to generate purpose from nothing. That's why even now, you can sit in silence and still feel okay. While others feel restless, you feel normal. But it didn't stop there. Your childhood didn't just give you freedom, it gave you real-world feedback. You climbed things that were too high, rode bikes down hills that were too steep, tried things that didn't always go right. And every small mistake taught your brain something important: what danger actually feels like. Not imagined danger, not social anxiety, not overthinking. Real, physical, immediate consequence. And because of that, your nervous system became calibrated differently. You learned what to fear and what not to. That's why today, when things go wrong, you don't always panic the same way others do, because your brain already understands what real pressure feels like. There's another difference most people don't talk about. You learned how to be alone without feeling lonely. You spent hours by yourself, listening to music, thinking, staring at the ceiling, walking, just being. And because there was no constant interruption, your brain became comfortable with your own thoughts. That's something many people today never develop. In fact, most people now struggle to sit quietly, even for a few minutes. But you don't, because your mind was trained in a world where silence was normal. Then there's something even deeper. You were trained to wait. You waited for your favorite show, waited to use the phone, waited for photos to develop, waited for people to be available. Nothing was instant. And over time, your brain adapted to that delay. You learned that good things take time, that not everything happens immediately, that waiting isn't suffering, it's part of the process. That's why today, instant gratification doesn't control you the same way, because your mind expects effort before reward. But the biggest difference of all was independence. You weren't constantly supervised, you weren't tracked, you weren't guided through every decision. You had to figure things out: where to go, what to do, how to handle situations. And because of that, you built something many people are still trying to develop today: internal confidence. Not the kind that comes from being told you're capable, but the kind that comes from proving it to yourself over and over again. Back then, you weren't constantly told you were doing great. There were no likes, no comments, no constant feedback telling you you're on the right track. Sometimes you did something well, and nobody said anything. And because of that, your brain learned something rare: how to keep going without needing recognition. You learned to act without waiting for approval. That's why today, you don't always need people to agree with you. You don't always need reassurance before making a move. You don't always need to be seen to feel confident in what you're doing. To others, that can look like distance, but in reality, it's independence at a deeper level. There's something else people notice about you. When something goes wrong, you don't immediately panic or start talking it out. You start thinking. You start assessing. You start solving. Because growing up, you didn't always have someone there to fix things for you. If something broke, you tried to fix it. If something went wrong, you adjusted. If a situation got uncomfortable, you dealt with it in real time. And that built a pattern. Problem first, reaction second. That's why in stressful situations, you often move before others even understand what's happening. Most people think being alone is something to avoid. But for you, it was something normal. And over time, it became something powerful. Because when you spend time alone without distraction, you don't just pass time. You build clarity. You understand yourself better. You think deeper. You become more grounded. That's why you can sit with your thoughts without needing to escape them. While others feel uncomfortable in silence, you often feel centered. Not because you're different, but because your mind was trained differently. So when you look at the world today and feel slightly out of place, it's not because something is wrong with you. It's because you were shaped by something that no longer exists. A childhood that didn't remove every obstacle, but taught you how to move through them. A world that didn't constantly guide you, but expected you to figure things out. A life that gave you freedom and trusted you to handle it. And that created something rare. A mind that can function without constant input. A mind that doesn't collapse under pressure. A mind that doesn't depend on validation to move forward. You're not outdated. You're not behind. You're not disconnected from the world. You're carrying a way of thinking that the modern world is slowly trying to rediscover. The ability to be alone without feeling lost. The ability to act without being told. The ability to stay calm when everything feels uncertain. That didn't come from nowhere. It came from how you were raised. So if you've ever felt different, this is why. You weren't just raised in the 1970s. You were built by it. If you grew up like this, drop a comment and say, 70s strong. And if this explains something you've always felt but never understood, subscribe, because we're just getting started.